From early 1968 to Halloween of 1969, a vicious creature was stalking the Barrowland ballroom in Glasgow, Scotland. The bodies of 3 young women who had gone out for a night of dancing were found brutally beaten and strangled. Coroners would also note that each had been viciously assaulted. 25-year-old Patricia Docker was found on February 23, 1968, nude and battered, but no one had seen who she had left the ballroom with the night before. 31-year-old Jemima Macdonald was last seen August 17, 1969, at the dance hall with a slim young man with short brown hair. He stood out because he would pepper his conversation with biblical passages. The next day, she was found beaten and strangled. Helen Puttock was found on Halloween. The night before, she and her sister had met a young man named John at the Barrowland ballroom, who had also recited Bible passages. Despite police publishing a composite picture of the man in question, he was never identified. The 1960s were not the happiest time in Scotland. Unemployment was up and many of the shipyards were closing down, making the problem worse. In Glasgow, youth gangs were running rampant and building a fearsome reputation. Nationalism was on the rise, however, seen as a way out of the trouble. By the late 60s, Scotland was eyeing a seat at the United Nations to the irritation of the government in London. The young people of Glasgow were finally seeing a brighter future and pride for their embattled nation, but a dark shadow would be cast over these hopeful times. The Barrowland's ballroom was a gathering place to listen to music and socialize. It had burned down in 1958 but had reopened in 1960. In 1968, it became the hunting ground for a twisted monster who to this day remains unidentified despite one of the most intense manhunts in Scottish history. On the night of February 22, 1968, a 25-year-old woman went out dancing. The Barrowland hosted a 25 and older night every Thursday, and she had attended to have some fun, stopping by more than one dance hall throughout the course of the night. The next day, when the young single mother did not return home, her parents assumed she had simply spent the night with a friend she had met the night before. Her nude body was found lying within a block of her home as if she had been attacked on her walk home. She had been savagely beaten in her face and head before she was strangled with a belt or something similar. Her purse would be found in the nearby river cart. Cart River? I don't know. But her clothes were never recovered. Police went door to door to see if anyone had seen or heard anything suspicious the night before. But the best they could find was a person who had heard a woman shout, "Leave me alone," but had not gone out to investigate. In this first case, coroners could not determine whether her attacker had assaulted her. Perhaps he had been in a hurry to flee after she had cried out. There was not another attack for well over a year, allowing the people of Glasgow to feel a bit safer as if the Docker crime had been a one-off event. The city still had a gang problem, but at least there was not a bloodthirsty maniac stalking women on their streets. Their false sense of security was shattered on Sunday, August 17, 1969, when another victim was found. 31-year-old Jemima Macdonald had gone out to the Barrowland on the night of August 16th, as she did often. Her sister watched her 3 kids to give her a break from the busy life of a single mother, but she soon found herself in a nightmare when she encountered the man who would become known as Bible John. Jemima was seen with a young man who looked to be in his late 20s or early 30s. He was about 6 feet tall with brown hair and well-dressed. The people who heard him speak said that he did so with a Glaswegian accent. Interesting word, not a Glasgowan accent. So despite no one knowing him, it seems he was local, but what made him stand out were the Bible passages he slipped into conversation. They were seen leaving just after 12:40 a.m., heading in the direction of her home. The next day, Jemima's sister Margaret started to worry when she did not return home. She heard children in the neighborhood discussing a body they had found in an abandoned building nearby. Never believing it could be Jemima, Margaret did not investigate the building until Monday. Inside, she found her sister's badly beaten body laying face down with her shoes and stockings laid out beside her. Coroners reported that she had been struck repeatedly in the face and head as well as assaulted by her attacker. Once he was done, he had strangled her with her own stockings. Macdonald was found fully clothed aside from her stockings, but her underwear had been torn, indicating the heinous crime that had been committed against her. While the similarities are glaring between the two homicides, they were not immediately linked. However, after extensive interviews with eyewitnesses, it was discovered that both women had attended the Barrowland ballroom, and the theory that a single culprit was responsible developed. For the first time in Scotland, a composite image of the man seen with the two women was made and distributed to the public with an appeal for information. Undercover police were sent to the Barrowland ballroom to look for the man described by witnesses. But after a few months, they gave up on this particular angle, and it almost seems like the creature was monitoring police, as shortly after they stopped sending undercover officers to the ballroom, he struck again. On the night of October 30th, 1969, a 29-year-old woman named Helen Puttock had gone dancing with her sister, Jean, at the Barrowland dance hall. They met two men, both of whom were named John. One of them was open about his career and hometown, while the other revealed little about himself and did not have a single drink. After an hour or so of getting acquainted, the four left the dance hall. One of the men headed for the bus stop while the sisters and the other man got into a taxi. During the ride, the young man quoted passages from the Bible, like the suspect in the Macdonald case had done, specifically referencing passages from the Old Testament and Moses. Perhaps this psychotic individual thought he was cleansing the earth or some other evil delusion. This theory is supported by his disparaging remarks about the dance hall, which he called a den of immorality. Jean last saw her sister as she got out of the taxi, leaving Helen and the strange man alone. The next day on Halloween, a man walking his dog came across Helen's body behind an apartment building. Like the other victims, she had been viciously beaten by her attacker, assaulted, then strangled with her own stocking, just like Jemima Macdonald. Her clothing was covered in grass stains from the heroic fight she had put up, but in the end she was unable to stop him from taking her life. Helen also had a deep bite mark on her upper thigh, and her purse had been dumped out. Police found a man's cufflink in the grass nearby that possibly belonged to the creature. Helen's sister Jean was able to give a detailed description of the man who had been with her and her sister. In addition to his height, hair color, and attitude, she said he had an overbite. However, bouncers at the dance hall disagreed with her and described him as a short man with black hair rather than the 6-foot-tall man with brown hair that she had described. Though some of this can possibly be explained by them seeing him in a darker environment than Jean had. Police canvassed the area in search of other witnesses and found a bus driver who had seen a man that matched the description given to them by Jean. He had been walking just after 2 a.m., and the bus driver said that he looked as though he had been in some sort of altercation with grass stains on his clothes, marks on his face like he had been struck, and one sleeve rolled up perhaps due to losing his cufflink. With no one in custody, authorities published an updated composite image of their suspect. They even approached more than 400 barbers in the city due to the suspect's short hair that was not in line with the current popular style in a long-shot attempt at identifying Bible John. Dentists were asked about patients with the same bite pattern as was found on Helen's leg. In the first year after the Puttock homicide, police talked to more than 5,000 suspects and took 50,000 witness statements, but none led to an arrest. Jean would review hundreds of police lineups, but the monster remained elusive. Law enforcement would once again go to the ballroom undercover, But despite all their efforts, they were not able to track down their suspect. Many have put forward theories on who Bible John might have been, including some who think it was the infamous serial killer Peter Tobin, but none of them has panned out, and the case remains unsolved to this day.